investments. But before making them, I would like to know how do you distribute your portfolio. So you have 100% on your portfolio, and inside this 100%, how do you distribute and divide your money here?
I'm a little bit different than most people on this. Rather than saying I'm going to have 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds, I do it by dollars basically. So I say I want to have X dollars in cash.
Okay.
This is the number of dollars that I want in cash that will make me feel safe to take care of my family, to prepare for emergencies. And once I have that, everything else goes in stocks.
But what is the rationale of it? So how do you set a goal of how much dollars do I need to have in cash, for example?
There's really no science behind it. It's just, what do I need to feel comfortable to sleep well at night, to say, if there was a medical emergency or something bad happened in my career, if there was a big emergency in my family, if there's a big recession, whatever it might be, how much cash do I need in the bank so I can be like, that's enough, that's plenty. There's no science behind it. It's just kind of a feeling of like, that makes me feel comfortable. I could live X number of months or years on just this cash, and that makes me feel good. And once that is achieved, every other penny, everything else goes into stocks. Okay. And I don't even dollar cost average. It's just whenever I get any cash laying around, boom, it all goes into stocks.
So in your case, how many months do you feel it's good before thinking about investing long term?
It changes for everyone, and it's changed for me over time. I would have given you a different answer 5 or 10 years ago than I would today, because I have young kids now, because my wife is at home, and it's kind of I'm the breadwinner now. So it's changed over time. Years ago, it was 6 or 12 months, and that would be like, that was adequate to me. Now it's pushed up to several years of living expenses, which I would say is excessive. It's not. I'm not even recommending other people do that, to have several years of living expenses set aside. That's not really necessary. I do it because, well, for two reasons. One, I know that myself, just understanding my personality, I'm more prone to worst case scenario thinking than most people. I'm more wired to be a little bit paranoid about economic collapse and whatnot, and that's just my personality. It's just who I am. So I want a little more because of that. The other thing I think is important, that this applies to everyone, is that the biggest risk in the economy is always what no one is talking about or no one is thinking about. We learned this with COVID. For the last 10 years, no one who was talking about economic risks, no one said the biggest risk is a virus that's going to shut down the global economy. No one was talking about that. The biggest risk is always what you don't see coming. And because of that, if you are only preparing for the financial risks that you can foresee, by definition, you're going to miss the biggest risk. That's going to be the surprise. So I think everyone should have a level of liquidity and safety in their finances that seems excessive, because that's when you know you are prepared for the risks that you cannot even think about, that you can't foresee.
Yes. I'm not sure if I remember it correctly, but when we were shooting with Howard Marks, he said something like, the absence of risk is the greatest risk.
That's it. That's
something
it.
like that, right?
Carl Richards, who's a financial advisor, he has a quote that I love. He says, risk is what is left over when you think you've thought of everything. After you've planned for all the risk, and you think you're thinking about the future, real risk is what's left over that's not on that list.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. You said that if I asked this question for you like 5 or 10 years ago, your answer would be very different.
Yeah.
But nowadays, you have some years in advance invested in liquidity and something very secure that you can take out the moment you want. But do you think it's related to your mindset, or, for example, the level of money you have today? Because nowadays you're making more money than you used to make.
Yeah.
So do you think it's related also?
That's a good question.
Or it's a behavioral type of thing?
I think that's such a good question that I haven't thought much about. I would say 80% of it is my family situation. We got young kids. They rely on me for support. It's a different phase of my life. 20% is probably higher income, and hey, now I can save a little bit more. So maybe 5 years ago I would have wanted to if I could, but now that I can, I'm like, yeah, let's do that. I also have to acknowledge too that there might become a point 5 or 10 years in the future where I say that's too much and I want less cash, or I want even more for whatever reason. Everyone's always changing, going through phases of their lives. So rather than like being really stubborn on like, this is my financial plan and I'm sticking to it, that might seem like a good, noble cause. But I think everyone changes, and you just need to embrace how you change over life. So I might give you a different answer 5 years from now.
Okay.